Hello, everybody. Slides? There we go. We must have questions. I'm going to try to summarize, what a wonderful afternoon. I'm going to try to summarize my experience listening to such great speakers. And I think what unites the speakers is that they were at one point and still completely transfixed by a question. Like which way to point? Okay, great. My thesis is that questions are more important than answers. We think otherwise, and I'll tell a story that gets us there. First, though, when we read the newspaper, I'm really troubled. We'll read a story about something terrible happening here. We'll read a story about a baseball team. We'll listen to a story, perhaps on the radio, about a grand party, and then a child who's starving, and then we'll go to some other story. And I wonder what has happened to us as a news-consuming public, where we feel the ethical need to know what's going on, and yet we don't pause at the end of each of these stories to try to figure out, well, what can we do about it? What's the question that I might be able to answer? What's the question that we might be able to answer when we're faced with such a story? If you take nothing else away from my presentation, I would like you to, next time you're consuming news, listen to whatever story it is, and then turn it off. And then focus on what is the question that we, as the most educated, luckiest people in the history of humanity, what can we do about it? This is Kathy Sullivan. She used to be here at the John Glenn Institute. She used to run COSI, and she is the first American woman to walk in space. She was on 3 space shuttle missions. And though we're buddy-buddy here, I don't know her really well. I really like her a lot. We were supposed to have tea on the day after Thanksgiving in 2006. She called me on Thanksgiving night, and I figured it was to cancel, and I said, are you canceling? She said, no, I just want to change the venue. I have this really sweet cherry red airplane, a 2-seater, and I have just enough hours in it, because it's brand new, just enough hours that I can take up my first passenger. Would you like to be my first passenger? So the obvious answer is no, so I said yes, and we met at Don Scott Field, and she straps me into the back of the plane. It's a toboggan, I don't know how we call this, but her seat in front and my seat behind, and she straps me in. It's 5 points. I was like a space monkey. You're really quite strapped in. In fact, so much so that later we went off to lunch, and Elisa, my wife, was next to me, and Kathy's in the back seat, and we're on our way to get some lunch. And Elisa says to me, when I saw her strap you into that plane, I thought that if that plane caught on fire on the tarmac, you wouldn't survive. And Kathy's in the back seat, making that astronaut face, calculating something. And she says, you know, of all the fatality modalities, that's not in the top 100. I'm haunted by the idea that she had 100 ways to die my wife has never imagined. Anyway, we're sitting there. There's a point to this. We're sitting in the plane, and I'm watching the control stick move. I'm not touching it. I know it's mimicking her moves, and I'm wondering what she's doing. I'm wearing the headset with the little microphone, and so I ask, what are you doing up there? And she says, what do you mean? I said, well, what are you doing up there? She says, I don't understand the question. I said, well, what I'm thinking actually is that if she passes out, I've got to land the plane. So I really want to know what she's doing up there. Anyway, she says, oh, well, I'm learning how to fly this plane, which is the worst answer you could get. And I say to her, that's the worst answer you could have given me. And she said, no, it's the best answer. A pilot who is not learning how to fly the plane is about to make the worst and perhaps last mistake of her life. You want a pilot who's learning how to fly the plane. This control, for example, she said, I'm still trying to master this one. As an English major and not a pilot, I turn this into a metaphor for life, a redefinition of what is competence. Do I want to be expert and perhaps risk being bored with what I'm doing? Or do I want to be learning how to fly this plane, this presentation, this action, everything I do? This is the point in Suzuki's book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. This idea that we think we want to be expert. And we've told you to be expert. Now, the people up here are experts. We've heard from experts, and yet what makes them so powerful, what makes all of us so powerful, is when we tap in to that childlike curiosity, that beginner's mind, that sense that we don't know, that there's a question that must be answered. So I grab this sandwich and hop on this bike and go down the road and climb this tree. You know what that experience is like from when you were 11. Completely thrilling, completely engaging. This is the beginner's mind. So it's the question that we seek. This is my mother, Jacqueline Finn Isaac. She died not a month ago, and she was a great asker of questions. Not the kind of questions that might deepen your thinking, I'm sorry to say, but more the kind of questions that kept you sharp. You really not shaving? You're wearing that? Tell me what's going on in the world. They were all kinds of questions, and they were very helpful. I grew up in a world of questions. We come to Ohio State, and the questions might get more Socratic. There might be more learning directly in the questions, though plenty to learn from my beloved mother. To be or not to be, that is the question. That's actually not the question. That's a great question, but that's not the kind of question I'm talking about. The kind of question I'm talking about starts, how can we? How do we? I'm more interested in the mundane sorts of questions. What is the question that only you can ask? There's something about the power of today's speakers and all of us in the room that if there's one question we've got to get, we've got to focus on, it's the question that only you can ask. That if you were on your deathbed and you did not ask it, that question never was asked. This is my dog. I know people say that dogs look like their masters, but I don't see it. I inherited him about 30 days ago. He is my inheritance. He has outlived 3 masters. And I said to him, Bo, if you have my number, just run away. Oh, the reason I show him there, though, is because I watch him. Well, he's got a question, a burning question. You go on a walk, and I think, I want to be more like my dog. He's running, he's sniffing, he's got to know what I don't know. I don't know what he's after. It's probably gross, but it's not for me to want his question, nor he to want my question, or you to want the questions of, we have to find our own question. This is Acacia Duncan. She's an actress and a playwright and a scholar in the theater with Available Light Theater Company. I was writing a play at one point and having trouble, and I happened to be chatting with her. I said, I don't know what to do next. I don't know how to do this. And she said, well, what's the question you seek to answer? And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, every playwright sits down to answer a question, but not for the audience, a question for himself or herself. Each of us tries to figure out, what is the question that I think is so worthy of answering that I will devote my time, my intensity, my resources, my friendships to trying to figure out how to get it done? Once I know that question, once I answer that question, hopefully there's an audience. If there's not, I still answered my question. If you go to artieisaac.com, there's a free resource on how to answer questions. I simply want to make it available to you as a resource. It's a 62-minute idea generator, and it's all too free. So I'll leave you with this thought, this idea that when people ask you a question, they're trying to figure something out. How do I do this, they ask you. And you might think, well, gee, I should give them an answer, but don't. Don't answer other people's questions. When someone says, how can I get it done? Ask them, what do you think you ought to do? Well, they're going to say, I don't know. So ask them this. Well, what would it be if you did know? All they want is the permission to try to answer their own question. And they will give you answers right away that are far superior to the question and the answer you were ready to offer. So what's your question? Hopefully we leave here, not as experts in what we heard, but we leave here with some sort of point of curiosity, some sort of question, some sort of opportunity to learn how to fly this plane and build a better life. Thank you.